Every player that's played 2b2t knows about the Valley of Wheat. A base built back in 2011 that was once the most well-known and respected base on the server. Now, over 11 years later, it's quite the opposite. The majority of 2b's players, especially griefers and PvPers, absolutely despise the Valley, and when just one new block is placed there, they will always be drawn to destroy anything and everything that is at the Valley. But even with how destroyed a base can get on a server like this, it's always possible that one day it's going to come back. And that's exactly what the Luminous Enclave did for the Valley of Wheat. A restoration that the original creator, Jang, would truly be proud of.
The Valley of Wheat was well respected, usually stayed in good shape, and was rarely griefed by older players. But now, the Valley of Wheat is in extreme disrepair. There are still a few places in the valley that have not been lava casted yet, but at that point, that would be pushing the limits of what is even still considered to be within the boundaries of the valley. I knew the valley would see its fall someday.
During the past 3 years that have said, I want to repair the Valley of Wheat. All I can say to you is good luck.
Our story begins at the start of 2019. At this point, Jang's Valley of Wheat was in such disrepair that it was very unlikely that anyone would be able to fix it. At least nobody was interested in rebuilding the valley, until a player named Wallace1020, or 8-0, came by. He was always interested by the valley on 2b, so he thought one day, why not rebuild it? And that's exactly what he started to do. In July of 2019, he, along with a player named Matthew, created what is now known as the Luminous Enclave, at the time known as the Valley of Wheat Caretakers. Some of the earliest members of the group include the leaders, Wallace and Matthew, Dist and Fosho, JackT, Cosvic, and Jadestrouble. At the start of the project, it was gone about way differently than the 2022 completed valley. Back then, multiple layers of dirt were placed at the valley's protection, and then later on Matthew came up with the idea of rebuilding the terrain with obsidian, completely perfect with the original valley, which made it way harder to grief, and making the pyramid's top layer obsidian that were at the Z coordinate of 0, so directly on the eastern highway. The valley being a wasteland made progress, while steady, start very slow because lava casts still covered most of the valley at this point. At the end of 2019, the few members that were in the group all went inactive, leaving only Matthew and Wallace remaining. But this was still the beginning for the Valley Caretakers, and they were in for a wild ride. Throughout 2020, the obsidian terrain was slowly developed at the valley. The group was not very active for most of the year. Mainly Matt and Wallace would occasionally come and build the terrain. For a time near the end of the year, JackT and Jadestrouble came back again. Jadestrouble, with his friend BG for Baby Gast, had formed a different group called the Guardians of Andromeda, and they were the first to start blowing up a lava cast with TNT girls, as at this point TNT dupers were patched by house. Around this time is when Wallace made a schematic of the valley, which drastically sped up the speed of terrain building. As before, they had just had one window of the 2015 World download and another window open on Real 2b, which was their way of rebuilding terrain for all of 2019 and most of 2020. 2021 was the year where the fun began. From January to March, nothing had been really that much different from the past 2 years. But on March 24th, things began to drastically change. First, the group underwent a rebranding, being changed to the Luminous Enclave, the group's current name today. This was also the year that the group started to expand. At this point, there were the same 2019 members along with 2 players named Vaspeli and Joey, who had been in the subgroup of the Enclave called the Enclave, or Enclave, and then became part of the main group. Matt and Wallace found Vaspeli because of a Reddit post about the valley he had made shortly before. Now Wallace and Matthew would bring a lot of new people into the group, including EBSmc, Codminer 22, Splito, House was here, crxpticz, Eggsundham, and myself later down the line. This increase in players drastically sped up the process of clearing the casts and fixing the obby terrain. But things were about to get a whole lot harder, and not in a typical way. All things were going smoothly until late April of 2021, when Russian 2b2t players showed up at the valley while the Sandclave was inactive for a couple days. They didn't grief the valley, but not knowing what we were actually doing, they made a giant obsidian flat platform over all of the terrain that had already been placed, didn't even remove any lava casts or floating blocks, and made a giant obsidian pyramid which was never at the valley prior, was very out of place, and a massive eyesore. It didn't stop there. The Russians then went to the man himself, FitMC, and got him to make a video which not only made them look like they were the ones who spent the past 2 years at the valley, but also completely bashed the Luminous Enclave, making it seem like they were in the wrong and trying their very hardest to ruin the Russians. The ordeal lasted from late April to late May 2021, until the Russians finally left after getting a fit video out of the still very much incomplete valley. In early June, after things had finally calmed down, things got even harder again due to a certain group on 2b2t that everyone knows all too well. June 2nd was the first day the valley was attacked by the group BSB. Over the next 3 days, they removed all the place wheat and lava casted over all the pyramids. I came into the group on the 4th after meeting EBS at spawn, and got to the valley right in the middle of a fight with BSB. The first thing I realized that the next few months were not gonna be easy ones. Throughout June of 2021, run-ins and fights with BSB happened almost every day, and it was a pretty rough time. At the end of June, after Eggsundham quit 2B, to as of yet still not return, the Sandclave left for a week, and then came back on July 4th to start grilling TNT on the lava casts from the month before. Of course, it didn't even take an hour before one BSB member showed up again, so yet another wave of inactivity hit the Sandclave, this time for over 2 months. After spending the rest of the summer helping with other projects on the server, the Luminous Enclave returned to working on the Valley of Wheat on August 23rd. During September, the June and July casts were removed and the pyramids that had been withered were rebuilt during the 1st of October to the 9th. Unfortunately, the valley would have more returning visitors on October 13th in the BSB again, as the Sandclave had made a mistake that had been made time and time again throughout the years. We ended up placing the grass and wheat down very hastily, which would attract the attention of new players passing by, and not knowing about the Valley of Wheat's later history, they would talk about it in public chat. As a result, everything was lava casted again, and activity reached a dead stop for the rest of 2021. We now arrive in the final year of Valley Reconstruction, 2022. At the beginning, the group at last turned all focus to the underground tunnels, which had actually been partially untouched since 2015. There were actual sections of it still originally from Jang. So we built obsidian on the outside of the stone pillars to make them harder to grief along with the rest of the valley. After about 2 weeks, everybody left after winter break ended, and while a few members would be active elsewhere, no progress would be made until the start of May. This time, everyone in the Luminous Enclave was determined to get the Valley of Wheat completed no matter what was in the way. The group expanded again, with some members of SBA joining, and members who had never been to the Valley of Wheat before helping out. Progress resumed in early May by first fixing the underground tunnels that were withered in the past 3 months. Next, on May 19th, was to wither away at the giant obsidian pyramid that had still sat at the valley 1 year later. We managed to destroy the entire thing with withers in only 3 days of work. Now all remnants of the atrocities done by the Russians in 2021 were gone forever from the Valley of Wheat. After the removal of the Russian pyramid, our old boys in BSB showed up once again to the Valley of Wheat. This time, we knew what we had to do to get them away. Every time they showed up, members of the Sandclave would fly around while they were lava casting and steal any lava source blocks that they would create while any casts were being made. This made it almost impossible to do any casts over the valley. Slowly over the first half of June 2022, BSB's motivation to grief would slowly be chipped away at. The next step came on May 24th to remove the bottom of the cast and with end crystals to complete all of the valley's obsidian terrain. After 4 days, Every single block of obsidian terrain was where it needed to be in the valley. Terrain completely identical to Jang's 2011 terrain. Removing the lava cast from late 2021 was up next. This time, the group had a large amount of TNT for this, and everybody in the group came for this part. With the mass amount of TNT and all active members, we absolutely steamrolled from west to east through the lava casts, only taking about 4 days from June 24th to 28th to remove all cobblestone from the valley. Now came the long-awaited last step of the Valley of Wheat restoration project, placing the grass and dirt and wheat on all of the terrain. It had to be done 3 times: the dirt, tilling the dirt, and then placing the wheat and potatoes on it. After 3 days of grueling, sleepless days and nights, on July 2nd, 2022, just shy of 3 years since the start, it was done, 100%, no block left untouched. After 3 long years, it is complete. Jang's entire Valley of Wheat is once again a landmark monument for all 2b2t players to see. Looking back, restoring the Valley of Wheat, while very tough and time-consuming, was a project that kept 2b2t interesting at a time where the server is slowly dying and doesn't seem to have a way out. Wallace and Matthew can finally be happy knowing that the project they started over 3 years ago now is always destined to be finished. The Valley of Wheat for a second time is the symbol of how you can envision, if you can envision anything and put your mind to something, anything can be achieved. Looking from my perspective, I saw dedication to Minecraft that I will probably never see again. I met so many people that I will likely be friends with for a long time, and saw a base that seemed doomed to never be pristine again be completely revived. Things that make the server what it is today. While it took so much time, effort, and energy to complete, I would not change the time I spent with the Luminous Enclave at the Valley of Wheat for anything else on 2 Builders, 2 Tools.